welcome back to the Fermented World Brewing channel. Today we're looking in on these three meads, all traditional meads, all brewed at different temperatures. So there's one here which is really cold to the touch, which is at 16 degrees. We've got the one that's at normal 20 degrees, and this one is at 29 degrees. Today we are going to take a hydrometer of each and just record that. Then they're all going to get put back into the same situation that they are in. So this should be a really quick one, as we're just going to take 3 hydrometer readings just to see where they're at in the fermentation. Now, this one, which is the one that's been on the heat mat, is starting to go clear, which means there's no fermentation happening, so the yeast is starting to drop down. The one that is in normal room temperature that I brew at, we've got some small bubbles still coming up, really frequent but kind of small. And in the other one we've got kind of, I want to say, larger bubbles maybe deposited at the top here, but the fermentation is a lot slower. So first things first is we're going to check this, the heated one. They're all going to be put back into the same environment, right, that they were in. So for example, this is going to go back in there, on the mat, the heat mat, for as long as it takes for these to finish brewing, so that when we do taste them, they've all been in said environment for that amount of time. So we're going to be waiting for the longest, which will be the one that's at 16 degrees, because it's fermenting slower. But again, we're going to take a hydrometer reading, see where we're at, and I need to go get some equipment. So these are all the same mead, same recipe, same amount of everything went into everything. The only thing that might have been slightly different is the amount in each demijohn, which would have been minimal, and it wouldn't have made any difference to the environment experiment that we did. So I'm not going to re-sterilize this because they are all the same mead. They're at different points, but they're all the same, if you get what I mean. So yeah, I'm not going to re-sterilize the equipment. I'm just going to do the tests that I'm going to be doing. So first things first is the one that's finished. We can see it's finished. If it hasn't gone completely dry, I'll be very, very surprised. So let's pop the old hydrometer in there, and we're going to take a plunge of this for the hydrometer. Now normally when it starts to clear out like it is, it means that the fermentation's finished, which wouldn't surprise me with it being at a higher temperature for the fermentation. So we are going to actually write down our findings. So I didn't actually write down any of the recipe because it's just the standard recipe I do. We're just going to call it temp XP for the experiment, and it was started on the 8th of the 2nd, 24. So we're going to do we're doing the hot one first, so we'll just write hot, and we're going to write down what the hydrometer says. Now, that's reading extremely high, like way higher than it should be. It's saying it's 44. It can't be 44. How is it finished at 44? That's ridiculous. How is it finished at 0.44? The yeast has just given up again. I think I've got dodgy yeast. It must be a dodgy batch of yeast that I've bought from somewhere, because it just keeps giving up. It's not got the tolerance that it says it's got. Yeah, it's extremely sweet, and it shouldn't be. It should be 100% fermented out. That's going back on there. And let's do the one that's at room temperature, which is still bubbling away. Now, could the temperature have killed it, the yeast, and made it stop? Or let's see what this one's at. If this one's below what that one's at, that is probably what's happened. It's been in an environment where it can't deal with it. But yeast doesn't normally die at that. Normally it's, I want to say 67 degrees or 76 degrees that you'll kill yeast. But yeah, I am not too impressed. I even used 2 hydrometers because I thought it was lying to me. But then when I tasted it, it's still sweet. Now this one's still cloudy because it's still got a fermentation go. So we're gonna try our best. See what we've got here. Now these didn't even have a great deal of honey in them. So there's absolutely no way that it should still be at that height. This is almost at the same mark. I'm flabbergasted. I'm absolutely flabbergasted. I'm not going to taste that because there's still tons of yeast floating around in it. But that's at like the 46 mark. So it's literally 0.2 off it. What on earth is going on? So the experiment may very well be flawed anyway, because we may not be able to get what we want out of this. So it's had 12 days. Normally it would have fermented out by now, even at normal room temperature. Why? Why? That is the question. So let's try the cold one. And see what tomfoolery we have with this. Now this should have a lot more sugar in. Should. As it was fermenting slower, which it does. This one has 54. 1.054. And that is the end of today's test. That is what I came for. I'm not sure what I'm going to be doing next. I suppose we're just going to sit, wait, and see what happens. I mean, the other one is clearly not fermenting anymore. Why that is, I do not know. Now, maybe Mangrove Jack have changed the yeast that they use for their mead yeast. Maybe it's not an 18% tolerance anymore. That's the only thing that I can think of, is it's the yeast. Because normally that would have gone 100% dry. There would have been no sugar left because it's only at 90. Most of my meads start off at 100, 1.100. This was diluted a little bit more. So if anything, it should have been dry. Well, that one should have been dry. So yeah, we shall conclude this flipping experiment another day. Hello and welcome back. We're following on from the meads all done at different temperatures. We're going to see where they're at. I've already done one test and it was kind of inconclusive because they all seem to have stalled. Like, they should have all fermented out by now. These were started on the 8th of last month, so the 8th of the 2nd. Say hello, Loki. Yeah, he's just come out of the bath, so he needs to dry out a little bit. But I also need to get these done. And I've just been handling him, so I need to go rinse my hands in the sanitizing solution. I'm going to be double checking on these temperature meads. Now, looking at them all, they do still seem to be fermenting. Even though one stopped completely, gave up, started to clear out. Then I gave it a little stir around and it seemed to reactivate, start again. So, ooh, sorry Loki. We're also going to have a little taste of them to see if there's any difference in taste. We've got one on a heat mat here, down here. I'll show you that one. That's at about 20, it's set for 29 degrees, but it's barely reaching 27. I'm not sure whether the mat's a bit crap or something like that. But the other one's set and that's about 20 degrees, as that's what the temperature of this room is. And this one's in a cooler place, which differs between 16 to 14 degrees. Now we need to get that back in its cooler environment sooner rather than later, so we're going to do that one first, which is the cooler one. So let's just pop the airlock off because we're going to reuse that. What I do need as well is my little booklet, because what it is I lose one of the books and then I'll flip and write it down in a different book, and then I'll lose that as well. So this one was at 1.046 last time we checked it. This is the cold one. No, this was at 1.054. Now we expected this to be fermenting a little bit less quicker than the rest of them, simply because it's in a cooler environment, the yeast isn't as happy, which stands to reason. So let's do a hydrometer check. Loki, please don't climb on my head, mate. Please don't. Your claws are very sharp, dude. Cheers, mate. Right, I'm gonna have to sort this flipping dragon out, otherwise he's gonna cause me some injuries. Their claws are terribly sharp. Come on. I can just about imagine where your head is. Come on. I know, I've got you. Come on, I got you. You can't be diving over there, look. Say hello to the camera, look. You're like, nah, bog off. No, it's alright. Say hello to the camera. Ooh. Come on, let's put you back in. Yeah, as cool as bearded dragons are, I kind of rescued him off somebody who wasn't sure what they were doing. And to be fair, I wasn't sure what I was doing either. I just kind of Googled it, winged it, and he's been alright since. Up until now, and he's been a bit of a pain in the backside, where he has been climbing the glass continuously. I think he's a bit constipated. 2, 4, 6. So that's down to 26 now, which is good. So the cold one is down to 26. So let's draw a line there. Let's pin the date. 13th March, which is my mum's birthday actually. I have already messaged her, by the way, to say happy birthday. And I've got some things that have just been delivered by Amazon. So they're going to get sent up to her. So the cold one is now at 1.0. What do we say? Still tons of bubbles floating around in it, you see, from the fermentation, still going. I can't try and get rid of as many of them as possible. Otherwise they call it to float and then you're not getting an accurate reading. Turn around and face me. Okay, so that's it. 2, 4, almost to 8. So I'm going to say it's the 18. So this one's now at 1.018, which means that's good enough for me to finish it. Let's double check and do a quick calculation on what the ABV of that one is. Okay, so that's resting at 9.6. So what we're going to do is we're going to have a little taste is what we're going to do. Just a tiny one because there's still active yeast in there and you don't want that in your tum tum. So yeah, 9.6 is what that's sat at the moment. So I'm going to make a little note of that, 9.6%. And then it's going to go back into the cold environment and then we're going to crack on with the others. Because what I want is I want all of that sugar gone. And as I take it out, I'm going to give it a little swirl, nice and gently. Not adding any oxygen, just kicking up that yeast again. Because it's colder, the yeast deposit does seem to be a little bit more settled. So it's a bit harder. So before that does go back, I'm actually going to give it a little stir to kick up that yeast deposit at the bottom. Because although swizzling it around will help, it'll get rid of some of the carbon, but we want all that yeast back suspended if possible, just to give it more of a fighting chance. And that's going back into the cold. Right, so we've got our little sample of that. Let's move on to the middle one, which is the normal one, which does still show some signs of fermentation. Not all that big, not a lot going on really. The heated one got quite a few bubbles, but hey, let's give it a check. Probably needs a bit more water in there as well, so I'm going to top that up. I mean, it has been so long, I'm not surprised it's bloody evaporated. I didn't actually check the other one, but I shall double check that. So let's go again, but with the middle one that's at the normal temperature of 20 degrees, which is what I normally ferment at. I ferment beers at 20 degrees, I ferment meads at 20 degrees. It just seems like a happy spot. The main reason for this is to see whether there is a difference in speed, and if you can brew it quicker at a higher temperature and still retain all those nice flavours, then why wouldn't you do it? If you can get it done quicker. But they do say a steady fermentation is better, which is understandable. It makes sense. So that's currently sat at 20 apparently, which is surprising considering that the other one was a lower temperature. Very surprising. Yep, so that one's at 20. 1.020. Let's quickly calculate the ABV. So that one's sitting at 9.3%. So a little bit less, only 0.3. But these should have been done by now. They should be fully fermented. So we've got a sample of that. Airlock is going back on. Move that one to the side, and then let's have the one that's been on the heat mat. try and bring the thermostat wire with it. Airlock off. Now this is the one that I thought would be the driest, to be fair. But the colder one seems a bit drier than the one that's done in the medium. I don't know. Now, let's get on with this one. Take a sample for the hydrometer. Considerably higher, which is not what I expected at all. So that was at 44. And it hasn't gone down much. 32, 4, 6. 38. Which means that's going to have even less alcohol. Let's quickly calculate. So that one's at 7%, and it did change slightly. It went down to 36. So 7%. How has this taken so long? It doesn't make any sense whatsoever. I am going to add extra nutrients to these and then give them another mix. I need a sample. So the only difference I'm going to taste in these is the sweetness, I think. Or possibly tainted flavours from the heated one, maybe. That was the theory behind it. Right, so we're going to sort out some nutrients. I'm going to go grab the cold one. Let's move that out of my way. So let's have a quick taste, see where we're at. This is the cold one. Tastes quite dry. Tiny bit of flavour left. Not a lot going on. Tastes very neutral. There's no twangs or anything like that. There's no sharpness or anything. A little bit of sweetness left. That's the middle one, done at normal temperature. Has a bit of a less cleaner taste. Like there's a sort of a sharpness there, even though it's got that sugar with it. And now for the hot one. Yeah, the hot one's not nice at all, even though in comparison yeah, that's produced some rather gank flavours. But we shall persist. Let's just pop them up there. We don't need them anymore. We're going to get some yeast nutrients. We're going to add said nutrients and we're going to see what happens. Hopefully, after a bit of variation and some yeast nutrients, it'll kick up again and go and sort its crap out basically. Let's do my boxing now. Right, so 1 teaspoon per gallon. In you go. pop your airlock back on so we don't get them mixed up. But the heated one definitely did have a, I would say unpleasant in comparison to the others. I think if I'd have put that one to my lips first, I'd have felt different about it. But yeah, it definitely wasn't as nice. Out of all of them, the one done at a cooler temperature actually seemed to be the most flavoursome, even though it's got less honey in, which is very interesting. So even if we conclude nothing other than that, we are sort of winning. It's half a win. Right, let's put that out of my way for that, because there's no room in there to put it just yet. So let's write down. From that date, we shall add 1 teaspoon of yeast nutrients, and we're going to give them all a good stir. So let's speed this up. Okay, so there we have it. It has been, what is it now, 13th of March. These were started on the 8th of February. So yeah, it's been over a month now. They should all be done. I'm not sure why I'm getting to this point now where it's not doing what it's supposed to do. But we have stirred up the yeast and we've mixed in some more nutrients. Hopefully that'll give us what we want. So I'm going to pop these back where they need to be. One on the heat mat, one in the cold part, and one in the normal part. And we'll check back in maybe another 2 weeks, see what's crack-a-lacking. Hopefully they've fermented further. We've got it documented of what they were at. Ideally, I wanted all these to go completely dry, so that we can then add other things to them to then bolster them back up, but then we still get the ABV that we want, around 13 to 14% is fine. I'd even take a 12, but anything below 10 really, it's just a little bit, you know, it could be better. But thanks for watching, and I'll see you all soon when we're back with this.